All right. Today we have Kira Shishkin, the CEO of Informed, the news concierge service to beat information overload. So, Kira is a four-time serial entrepreneur, strategic advisor, and investor in the technology industry. His experience spans investment banking, corporate strategy, and private equity investments in categories defining ventures. His education includes University of Chicago, Booth School of Business, and Stanford. Kira was in Forbes 30 under 30. Y'all already know what to do. Let's give a warm We Talk Weekly welcome to Kira Shishkin.
Hey, hey, how are you?
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Classy Lady Sparkles. That was a very
Yeah.
generous introduction. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Lauren, for having me on tonight. It means a lot to be invited on your show and to share our mission, share the mission with your community. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. It's a great pleasure for us. Let's jump right into it. Let's talk a little bit about your mission. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about what actually got you into that to inspire the mission, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked that question because I think my background is pretty unique, and I think it enables what we're doing now in a very unique way. So I grew up in information conflicts. I spent my first decade. I was born and raised in Kiev, in Ukraine. I spent my second decade in Israel, also home to a lot of information conflict and very real conflict. And then for my third decade and onwards, I came to the United States and I thought, okay, you guys have it all figured out. And being here over the last, almost coming on 10 years, I definitely feel like America is in the middle of a civil war right now. And it's playing out in the information realms, and people are not sharing a common set of truth, common set of facts anymore. And so reflecting on sort of the Middle East, Eastern Europe, now the United States, all I see is information conflict. And it's been too long of, keeping, of seeing that, witnessing that, and doing nothing about it. Over the last couple of years, there's a growing interest and like, hey, you know, there's something that we can do to make this better, make our lives, more grounded in a common set of facts and realities, and to just get us at the same table. Because right now, across the world, as we look left and right, people are so self-isolated and self-radicalized in the process that it just adds a lot of urgency to what we're doing now. But I hope that answers some of your question. Happy to dig deeper into any component as well.
No, it did. It did. And I appreciate that, especially in the age of misinformation and false information and things that we're consuming online. I think you're right up there with the need and the necessary things that we need to be informed with. And so, with that said, let's talk a little bit about your mission. I think this is a great transition to that.
Yeah, with pleasure. And I'm honored, especially to be here on your show, knowing your reputation as you focus on informing people and having a discussion around news that are affecting them, that are affecting the decisions that they'll make in their everyday life, and is going to change and reshape their life. And those spaces, the space that you cultivate and others similar to it, are the underpinnings of how folks make decisions. But outside of those spaces, when you don't have the time to tune in, when you don't have the time to pay for expensive news out there, it's very difficult for the everyday person in the United States to be informed without being influenced, and to be informed without being overwhelmed. And it's gotten so bad at this point as the news industry as a whole, in the most corporate sense possible, has sold off the reader to the advertisers. It's become so difficult for the everyday person to just be informed without being influenced, without being overwhelmed. And so that's where the mission comes from. And it makes the problem that we solve, really rather urgent, because America has been robbed of access to factual information.
In looking at your site, I'm actually on your site right now. I think it's really unique because you have this you have this SMS piece that goes directly to your phone to inform those of, I guess, news basis covers. Like, why don't you walk us through exactly what the website is, Inform Now, and what was the impetus of creating this particular look or infrastructure, this wireframe of how it should be, and why choose that?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. I think the best way to think of what we're doing is a reaction to what's been the case for the last, decades. I would say is at least 2 decades of what we call attention terrorism. You can no longer just go online without being solicited along the way, without your attention being hijacked, commoditized, and held hostage for such a long amount of time. And we see that across social media very easily. But that behavior of capturing our attention and holding it hostage is true across everything that we touch online. And so we thought of, okay, well, obviously, if it comes to entertainment, people are sort of opting in a little bit into having their attention hijacked. It's part of the entertainment contract. But when it comes to information media, which is news, which is what we focus on specifically, it's unacceptable for your attention to be hijacked and for you to be influenced and solicited in the process of you trying to get informed. And so we thought, how can we do everything different from the way that the industry and the corporate beast of the news industry has been doing it today? And so we said, never advertisement, never engagement optimization. We're not trying to get you to read more. We're actually trying to give you back the time so you can do things that you're passionate about. And very few people are passionate about reading news all day. And so it's about doing less, and it's about this sort of minimalism and mindfulness around news consumption that we are pioneering. So with the SMS format that you alluded to, is the most minimal way for folks to consume information. There is no rich media, there is no photos, videos, other types of clickbait, and it is confined to a very, very short text. So we're building a habit for people who want to be informed but have no tolerance for being influenced to receive as SMS text every morning of the things that matter and are shaping the world in the biggest of ways. And we always filter this based on significance, on impact to the human condition. And they're able to have that executive briefing for them, whoever they are, even if they're not an executive, they're not a leader, they don't have to be. The everyday person needs access to factual information, to convenient delivery of that information, and be able to make decisions in an informed way. And we've picked a format that enables that values privacy, that honors people's time, and that doesn't solicit or engage them in ways that they shouldn't have to be forced to. And it just seeks to do one thing, and that's to inform them.
Go ahead,
So,
Lauren. Yeah. Mhm.
so um, right now, when it comes to public media, people rely heavily on public media, especially those that are in rural areas where there's only that one little small underfunded local news source that everybody relies on within that area to get their news. And now you have these drastic cuts to federal funding for public broadcasting totaling $9 billion. Like, what do you think that how does this affect these people? Like, what are these people going to do, and like how are they going to get just local news in their communities?
Absolutely. I think the gutting that is happening right now from PBS, from NPR, from the entire public broadcasting agency that oversees these children entities is extremely consequential. And it's the continuation of that robbery that I alluded to earlier of the everyday person is being robbed of information. And when you are robbed of information, it obviously has very clear implications. One of them that I think is less acknowledged is you become more vulnerable to misinformation because
Hmm.
when you're in an information desert in your town, in your village, in your zip code, in your even suburban area, when you have that information desert, the the information that you do hear, you are very, very sensitive to and very attuned to. And so you have these communities that are being essentially cut off from the information pipelines. Um, they're increasingly more vulnerable to misinformation, in the process to being radicalized, because now that somebody can come in and sort of take over the soapbox, so to speak, and start sharing ideas that are hard to fact check, hard to verify, hard to cross check in any way, because the pipeline has been sort of the information plumbing has been broken. And so I think it's a crisis, and that's what adds urgency to the problem we see and the problem that we are looking to tackle. This is happening right now. It's been happening for the last decade, and it's never been more important to equip the everyday person with their own way to stay informed. And we're seeing the opposite of that happen and unfold in front of our eyes. We have to do something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree with you. I had the opportunity to attend recently the Public Media Journalists Association conference that was in Kansas City. And I talked with several, countless public media journalists, and this was even before the federal funding cuts were even made. They were already pretty much seeing the writing on the wall when it came to what was going to be done. But these journalists were already concerned that they were going to lose their jobs. They were concerned that there were going to be cuts. They were concerned about how people were going to be informed, because there would be the areas that they were already employed in, there would be only maybe about one or two local stations there. And even these local stations weren't able to cover the amount of news that needed to be covered in these areas, these rural areas. So, ta even taking that into perspective, and now with the cuts and them possibly having to shut down now, it's just going to be extremely hard for people to get news. And it's just a really, really sad time, because now, like you said, like people have to take it upon themselves to become more like you have to now be more engaged. You have to, like, tune into people like yourself, and fight to get news, and that's newsworthy news, that's news that's trustworthy, and not misinformation and disinformation.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's right. And I feel like, this urgency that we seem to, very much be aligned on. It's I'm taking these things that are been unfolding over the last couple of months as a wake-up call, right? And I think this has been happening for some time, but now it's no longer ignorable. Now it's affecting everybody, and it has been for some time, but I feel people like to procrastinate, and that happens on a collective basis as much as an individual basis. People like to put things up, oh, hey, this is going to change, it's going to swing back. Well, guess what? It isn't swinging back, and it's getting exacerbated. And as we wait more on the sidelines, we will see, the worsening of this crisis. And I believe that every crisis that winds up, coming around was initially an information crisis. And so
Yeah.
we're now seeing that in its earliest innings, and we can do something about it. But the time to do something about it is immediately, is yesterday. And it's definitely now. And that's what gives sort of our work a great sense of urgency. And I'm both encouraged and disappointed that we are the only ones with Informed who are focusing on this level of convenient and laser sniper precision delivery of straight to every single person. There's no intermediary in between us and our reader, but there's also no other stakeholders. When you think of the big news corporations that sort of dominate and monopolize the information plumbing of this country, they have no incentives to inform you and leave you alone, because they make money through engaging you and through getting you to read longer, getting you to click around across their
Mhm.
ecosystem, and get the readers to click on the advertisements of all their partners.
Mhm.
The reality is the news companies serve the advertiser. They do not serve the person. And how easy is that to see? Do you pay for news? You don't pay for news. Nobody does. And when you don't pay for something, someone else is paying for it. And when someone else is paying for it, they are the customer, they are the client. And that's what's happened with the news. And we're trying to undo some of that damage and introduce a way of, hey, you know, we're putting you back in the spotlight, putting you back on the kind of pedestal of you are the personally optimize for. And all we think about is how do we make the reader's life, option, choices, freedom stronger and more. How can we serve the reader instead of serving? We don't have investors purposefully. We don't
Mhm.
have advertisers purposefully. We don't have sponsors that would want us to talk about certain things. And we are not beholden to any sort of platform, not to social media, not to anything of the sort. We have a direct access to our readers through SMS. We run a toll-free number. And that's the way that we engage. And that should become a much more basic expectation, I think, in society, that people should have that access. When you sign up for AT&T, you should be able to say, hey, I want factual news with my subscription. I want factual news with my plan. You shouldn't have to go and fight for them every single day and spend hours.
Right.
Yeah, I love this idea, and I love that you're mission based and not financial based, right? Fiscally supported by way of someone who may have agendas and initiatives, right? And I love that you guys are focused in a way that we feel that we can trust. But to that point, you have this age of AI, right? You have this age of chat botting and these fake bots that has been misinforming, right? How do you prevent yourselves, your organization, in being labeled as part of or one of those organizations that may be misleading to the community? How do you fight against that?
Absolutely. I love that you, thank you for asking that. I think we do something that, this is something I generally get into, in a longer form conversation or something as we were doing a deep dive, but I want to share this because I think it's very important. We do something else that nobody does in the news industry, is we treat our readers like adults and not as children. And what that means specifically is when we talk about an issue, for example, the Supreme Court made a certain decision, right? Well, the federal court overturned this decision. For example, the White House made an announcement. For example, the economy is expanding according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics or Census or Bureau of Economic Analysis. We don't just tell you about it, which we obviously do because we want to save you the time. We want to give you an executive news briefing every morning so that you know what's going on, but we actually give you direct access, which is not easy to do, and nobody in the industry does, to the primary sources. Meaning that as you read our executive news briefing, you have a link right there at your convenience that takes you straight to the Supreme Court ruling, straight to the bill of Congress, straight to the White House announcement, straight to the announcement from the Federal Reserve. And so instead of going through the intermediaries of one reporter tells another reporter, they tell a correspondent, and then they paraphrase it using AI with another outlet, and now it's on
Mhm.
social media. That's what we call secondhand, which is mostly third-hand news. We take our readers straight to the primary sources. And I would say upwards of 80% of our sources cited and things that we leverage are primary sources. And so we take them, straight to the horse's mouth and straight to that horse, so that they can make up their own mind and see the primary material instead of seeing a regurgitation of that material and an interpretation inevitably of that material. And that's one way in which we keep it truthful, keep it factual, and bring the reader straight to that source instead of the intermediaries along the way.
I love that. I love that. So, if I was to dive into informed dot now, how would I specifically for what we do? We specialize in solutions based journalism in hyper local news. How would we then use, we talk weekly, how would we use informed dot now to target hyper local news and uh, target our audience? That would be, of course, our job. But how could we utilize your platform and make sure that we're getting the news that's specific or that would benefit our particular audience?
Totally. I think the news is broken, as we've sort of acknowledged and established, and local news are probably the most broken part of the entire industry. And so there's an even greater urgency to the localism of news. With Informed, we are focusing with our flagship entrance main product with the most consequential news of the world. And they are shared through the lens of what is important to the everyday person in America. So there
Okay.
is definitely a huge emphasis and filter on what affects my life, whether I'm in Philadelphia or whether I am in Pittsburgh, whether I'm in Pennsylvania or if I'm in California. And so that is our flagship product. It's the global priorities overview that
Got you.
actually affect everyday life. And so we give a common fact base that anybody, no matter how local they are, can leverage. As we expand, as we grow, we are, in addition to what we're doing as this kind of global priorities focus, we're also tailoring to a much more hyper localized, whether it isn't just a region or a state, it may be as specific as a city and maybe
Yeah,
even a neighborhood. And so that is very much on the roadmap. And as we continue to expand, we create more localities that affect more people in very tangible ways. But
I
we
got you.
begin that with the global priorities and a global citizen view, because before you understand your local news, you need to understand the context which surrounds all of the things that happen in the US and all the things that are happening in the world. And there's a lot of disruption, as you know better than most.
Got it. Got it. No,
You
100% agree with you. Go ahead, Spark. Hmm.
you kind of answered my next question. So you've started 4 ventures, and you may have had to have some type of interaction with AI at some point. What have you done as far as your ventures till now that you've had to unlearn to create Inform
Great
I
question.
love that. And do you mean that from an AI specific lens or generally the unlearning of some?
holistically? Yeah,
Sorry?
holistically.
Yeah. I think one thing that I've had to learn time and again, because the industries in which I've built before were very different from each other. I built a small business and I built venture business. We've incubated a company in the scale of a larger enterprise, and we built also from nothing in another country. So I've had both the international, the cross industry, the incubation, and in the wild experience of building. And I think the one thing I keep learning again and again is who do you focus on? Are you focusing on the investor who has certain priorities, has certain thresholds of profitability, has certain sort of financial thinking? Are you focusing on the optics of what do the things look like? What is the PR marketing spin on these things? What do the news think about these things? Or do you focus on the very, very user, the person that is actually interacting with your product, with your service, and giving you feedback? Hey, I like this, I don't like this. I think one thing that I just keep learning and in some ways relearning every single time is what I call customer obsession. We want to be obsessed with the problem that our customer, our user, our client, our reader is experiencing, and focusing, laser focusing on that, and leaving behind all the other stakeholders that can help and do help, but can create noise and can sort of diffuse your focus and distract you, which in the end of the day is always very costly experience. And so having a laser focus on who your target customer is, who is the person that you're trying to help, and staying so clear to that has never been more important. With Informed, specifically in this business and in this service that we've created, we've taken that to the extreme because, as I mentioned earlier, we've refused advertisement revenue altogether. We could have made so much more money so much more quickly and just kind of focus on that financial aspect if all we did was allow advertisements. But we said, no, we are a mission driven company. We are on the mission to save the news industry, not to worsen or to perpetuate its problems. And so we said no to the whole advertiser category. We said no to the sponsor category, who would have undermined the credibility and the purity of our fact based reporting. We've said no to investors who have financial thresholds, financial incentives, and said, hey, we will give you money, we'll loan you things, we'll make it easier for you to build, but you have to answer to these financial metrics. And we said none of those things are sufficient. The only person that we care about is our reader. And if they want us to exist, they will show us. And if they don't want us to exist, then we shouldn't exist.
I I love this. I'm gonna actually try to pull. Let me see if I could pull this site up real quick. I actually have it up, and let me see. There we
As
go.
he's pulling the site up,
Yep.
can you tell everybody who may be tuning in right now? Tell everybody that could be just possibly tuning in about your journey from Ukraine and Israel and all that, and then coming to the United States and your experiences with the media and all the news and misinformation and all that, and then what brought you into creating Informed
Yeah, absolutely.
as we're going through
Yeah.
the site.
Would you like me to repeat some of the things I mentioned and expand on them?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Totally. I would say the major theme in my life has been, exposure from an earliest of ages to information conflict, and I've just seen it across different environments. I was born and raised in Ukraine, in the capital of Ukraine, in Kiev, and from a pretty young age, I've seen the information battle between Russia and Russian media and Russian propaganda, which I wouldn't shy away from that word. It really is, and well acknowledged to be a propaganda. That machine and the power of that machine to sway minds, to change the way people think and make decisions, has just been so powerful. So from a really young age, I've seen the Russia-Ukraine information warfare unfold firsthand. And when I've had the fortune and the misfortune, because the context in which I moved to Israel for my second decade was actually rather tragic. We can go into it in a whole different episode and whole different conversation. But when I had the misfortune and the fortune to move to Israel, I've seen the same thing unfold. I've seen it actually multiply, because from the two sides of Ukraine and Russia, it actually multiplied into, at least six sides. There is the Israeli government, and there is the Israeli people, who I would say are not aligned very often. There's the religious community that is its own important stakeholder. There is the Gaza and the West Bank communities, which are different from each other substantially. They're governed by different organizations, and they have a very different climate to both the Gaza Strip and the West Bank territory. There's also the perspective of the Arab League that says a lot of things and does a lot of things that are different in substantial ways from what Gaza and the West Bank have been doing. And so you have this multipolarity of perspectives that are all vying for buy-in from the global observer and from the person on the ground living in the Middle East. And that explosion of information conflict has just shown me, like, wow, uh, this is really consequential. And everyone's constantly trying to convince each other of their version of reality. And you, as the everyday person, are often left with having to pick from off the shelf perspectives. Do you side with them or do you side with them? Do you
Hmm.
side with the left or the right? The up and down, where do you kind of position yourself?
Hmm.
Hard, because we've been in America, especially, that's kind of the rest of my journey, is coming to the US and seeing, wow, here it's in some ways more simple, in some ways much more complicated, because we have the
Hmm.
science, but the complexity and the nuance of how things get relayed, it's extremely complicated.
Hmm.
And the everyday person, the way it kind of hits us, the everyday woman, the everyday man, is we have to pick a side. We're forced to pick a side, pick a perspective off the shelf. And we are robbed of the ability, or rather access, to make up our own mind based on our own facts, based on our own reading. And that, I think, is in no small way what Informed is looking to pioneer. We are actively pioneering in Philadelphia, all over Pennsylvania, and all over the United States. So we're pioneering a way for people to make up their own mind on things, make decisions not in isolation of reality, but informed by reality. And most
Mm,
importantly, is to be informed without being influenced.
Hmm. So
amazing. Mhm.
I'm sorry. Go
Informed
ahead.
without influenced. Mhm.
I was just gonna say, how do you feel like, this narrative that's being created? How do you feel that shapes government like that we see today?
I think the poisoning of news is sort of a poisoning of the well, and we all drink from it. The government just as much as the everyday person. And I think the consequences are self-isolation, self-radicalization, and further polarization. And I think the difference in the way that it's shaping government and government officials is not that different from the way it's shaping the everyday person who is maybe a DoorDasher, who is maybe an Uber driver, who's maybe working in the service industries, making maybe waiting tables. They are being affected in the same way that they who make law, they who legislate, they who argue in big fancy rooms, in the same way. And so there's a poisoning of the well that has a universal impact. And I think it's obviously exacerbated when you have influence and when you have power. But the root of it is the same. Is are you picking sides and are you picking off the shelf perspectives? Or are you operating with facts? And are you making up your own mind from the first of principles?
Wow. So based on like what we're starting to see with, some people, I guess, and I guess just to for lack of what I'm trying to say, I'll use an example as far as like the No Kings, protests that kind of like spanned across the country, seeing things like that. Do you feel like there's going to be a point where some of the polarization that's been created over the past years, that's going to kind of subside a little bit? Like, do you see any of that happening and people starting to kind of come together, or what are your thoughts?
You're basically saying, you're asking if I think there's going to be a swing back from what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, like, or because, is there going to be like less like of people kind of like, I guess, when it comes to politics and people being so I guess so much against one another, and are people going to start coming together, or will we see less polarization?
Yeah, it's almost like, what do I want to believe, right? What I want to be the case. I do think the United States is extremely divided, is extremely polarized, and I think that's well acknowledged. Do I see a return to a cohesion, to unity, to a sense of, hey, we disagree, but we have the same fact base, and we disagree about the same. We understand what we disagree on. Right now, we don't even agree on what we disagree on. It's almost like the level of agreement is so deep, right, and so divided that it's almost hard to see it, right? And I think it's painful for a lot of people, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. That is maybe one answer. We're in the early innings of a very imbalanced political phase, right? We just have a new administration just come in. They've done a lot in the 6 months that have passed, and there's 3.5 years left of that perspective and of that sort of pole in the polar spectrum. And I think it's going to get worse before it gets better for sure. The question is it going to get better in terms of like, will we feel like we're a single nation, a single people again? I believe so. I would like to believe that is the case, but we can't take it for granted. We can't just sit back on the couch and say, you know what, I'm just going to wait this one out because, in a few years, we're going to have a swing back. In a few years, we're going to get, much more balance. I don't think we can take that for granted. If we are unsatisfied with what's happening right now, and the approval polls show it, um, we need to act. We need to do something about it in ways that doesn't have to be political. The work that we're doing with Informed it touches politics profoundly, but it is not a political work. It is sort of it's information infrastructure work. And it's not really about picking sides. It's not about being political. Some of our news are political in nature, but we don't just cover that. We cover all things that shape the world. And so for me personally, I don't feel comfortable sitting back and just taking for granted that there's going to be a return to equilibrium, a return to balance. I don't think that's something we can take for granted. But I'm not necessarily acting in a political way. I'm acting in the, what can we build the rails, the picks, and the access to create a society that has the tools to be more unified, to have the tools to be more cohesive. And so I would encourage anybody who has any sense of dissatisfaction with what's going on right now to not just wait it out, because if you wait it out, nothing's going to happen.
Mhm.
But step in and see what is the vision of the world that you want to help create, and how can you create that. If that's political, it's great, But it doesn't have to be. It can be on so many other realms that bring us together. And I think the time to act is yesterday, and it's definitely today. So I would
Yeah.
encourage anyone who's listening to take this initiative and to do it.
Awesome.
I,
Awesome.
I have one last question. Forbes, the Forbes 30 under 30. Although I know you don't like like the term of influencer. However, with the world that the younger generation that's, being brought up, it's a part of the influence in order to, I guess, inform them. What would be your approach to influence and inform without being an influencer?
I think influencer in its radical estate, when you think of the Kim Kardashians of the world, when you think of the really big industry name influencers, right, there is all these concerns about authenticity. There's concerns of like, this seems just like a corporate expression of the influencer trend. But the number of people who are micro influencers, but are still in no small way are influencers, is substantial and continues to grow. Sort of the middle class of influencers is a growing category. There don't just have to be these superstar influencers and then just unfollowed, unknown accounts. There's also a growing middle class of influencers that are, I think, the future of the influencer world and industry. And I think, if anything, this trend towards you can actually just pick up your phone, have a conversation, build trust with your audience, and inform and inspire people, I think that's actually a very powerful thing because it's giving the tools, it's democratizing the tools to give anybody the opportunity to have a platform, the opportunity to speak. And I think the biggest thing holding folks back is initiative and a sense of urgency and motivation. I think if you have something to say, and whether that's to inform people or to inspire people, pick up your phone. You have the tools to do it. You just need to, what in the Jewish community, I'm Jewish, we call chutzpah, which is a mix of charisma and charm and initiative. Take that and bring it to the people. You will be met with an audience because that's the tools that we have today. We have audiences at your fingertips if if you have the courage to put yourself out there. So I believe that profoundly, and I think the influencer world is more accessible and more empowering than I think we give it credit for. Because when we give it credit, we think of the big kind of top percent celebrity influencers, but the world of influencers is much bigger and much richer. So take advantage and have the courage.
Yeah, I love that.
Great.
I love that. I want to just circle back to your site. Let me pull it up. And again, I truly appreciate the minimalism of it and how you created this. But I do want to jump right into the idea that, and just for those who's watching, this is informed dot now, the website that they have created for you to come on and sign up. And again, this isn't an ad, this is just informing you to be directly to actual factual news, right? And so it starts right here, but I want to jump down to it says informed is your daily SMS news digest to beat information overload. We text you the most important news without ads, clickbait, sensationalism, underscore that, or bias of legacy media, which we talk about all the time. We text once every day morning to minimize the footprint or news on your attention. I love that. Who can you walk me through how this was created? Was it a sit down amongst your friends? Was it something that you woke up one morning and said, "Hey, I have this idea"? Was it something that you just were watching news and was totally pissed off and was like, "I need to do something"? Right? What was the start of Informed Now?
Absolutely. And I hope you don't mind a little, maybe a bit of silly story,
Yeah,
but
sure.
it was a very personal experience that he was the last straw on, the camel's back. It was just such a, almost like a rage moment. And it's been cooking, it's been building up for multiple years, for I would say, my whole life, as I've described it, through information overload, information warfare and misinformation
Mm.
campaigns from every direction. But there was a specific moment, and I was in San Francisco at the time. I've been moving around a lot, which I'm very I love moving around. This country is so rich and beautiful, and I having the chance to travel, I always try to take it. I was in San Francisco at the time, and I was actually a few hours away from the city, and I heard an alarm and sort of like a news headline, and it said there's an earthquake, and there might be a tsunami. Now, at the time, I was staying in the coastal area of San Francisco, like right on the bay, and I thought, well, hey, I better know if there's going to be a tsunami or not because it might just affect my life profoundly. And so I started, looking it up naturally, like, hey, Google, is there going to be a tsunami after the earthquake? San Francisco right now, what's going on? And I couldn't believe my eyes. The first one, two, three results were all paywalled, right? Like I couldn't actually find out if if
Mm.
this was going to happen or not unless I paid the Wall Street Journal or Washington Post or the New York Times
Yeah.
something north of $100 $150 a year. I was like, wait a second. So to find out if I'm going to be underwater in the next half a day or day, I need to pay a conglomerate an exorbitant amount of money to be part of their information ecosystem. It's like, hell no. Like that, there must be a better way. So I kept scrolling, and I was already kind of like, that's crazy. Three of the first results are gate capped from me. The third one had a sensational kind of advertisement or a headline that was so dramatic that I was like, is this like Armageddon? Like this is, what is going on here? This is very, very dramatic. And so I was already very suspicious, but I clicked into it and it claimed in the headline and in the thing to have the information. It claimed to have what I was looking for. But as I kept reading, I realized they had nothing. They literally were just reposting, rumor and reposting words from
Mm.
other headlines, and they had no information they claimed to have in that headline. So they were just sensationalizing and clickbaiting, and they had nothing to tell me. So I go onwards and I keep looking like where is a way for me to just get information on something as fundamental as an alert, and I couldn't. It was the verbosity was growing, the
Mm.
sensationalism, the dramatization, the clickbait was growing, the paywalls were not going away. The amount of advertisements I saw in those couple of minutes was probably north of 30, and there were some terrible ones. There was things that were just popping up in front of you, like the sort of, buy this car immediately, or on the side, and here's how to lose weight in 30 seconds, do this one. Doctors hate this one trick. And I'm like, wow, like the level of solicitation that I'm being targeted with as I'm just trying to find a quick answer to a question is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. It's maybe okay in entertainment if you're looking to entertain yourself and you're sort of like resign, okay, like I'll be a little bit hijacked. But this is not entertainment, this is information media. And it's critical to not be in that sort of, space. And that moment is when I knew that my rage and my frustration with the way the industry has sold us off as readers to the advertiser, to the platform, to investors, and to sponsors, that's like felt, wow, like we need to do something about this immediately. And that was the birth of
Mm.
Inform.now.
Fantastic story. If you're just tuning in, we have Kara Shishkin, CEO of Informed.now, an amazing site for you to form a decision by getting informed with factual information and news. Kara, if I was to ask you, what's the legacy that you would like to leave? What would you tell me?
Wow. It sounds dramatic, but a lot of things are. I would like to, you know, in a who was it? Prometheus that gave the fire back to the people. I would like to give people back the ability to make up their own mind
Mm.
without, having to pick sides, without being forced to take off the shelf perspectives and adapt them or reject them, but just to re-empower the ability for people to make up their own mind. I think that's the legacy, as much as dramatic as it may sound, that I would like to leave, and I'm in the labor of delivering that legacy.
Mm, fantastic.
Mm.
When someone signs up, is it a particular, and this is kind of like a fact, frequently asked question, so to speak. When someone signs up, is it a filter that they go through to say, okay, I want financial world news, I want political news, or is it just the hot topics or the hot news of the day around the world? Is that how it works?
So it always begins with the global citizen view, the things I
Okay.
mentioned, the things that are shaping the world in ways that you just need to know, because things that they may not be local, they may not be happening in Philadelphia,
Right.
but if Trump just signed an agreement that is removing the a tariff or imposing a tariff, everything in the United States is going to get more expensive or cheaper depending on what the decisions are.
Mhm.
If the TSA has announced that you can now fly without taking your shoes off, that's a consequential security shift. If there are wildfires that are affecting half the country, that's going to affect everything, the air quality in Philly as much as the air quality in Nebraska. And so we start with that sort of global monitor view, the things that matter the most. But as I mentioned earlier, is we are expanding and unfolding more ways to get more specific. So right now there are two ways to do that. The one that we are expanding over time is we are creating more ways, more topics that you can follow, more themes that you can tune into that are perhaps more specific. For example, we have one that's on technology. If you want to focus on technology news, you want to focus on healthcare and healthcare news. If you want to focus on things that are affecting a certain region, right? If you're looking specifically at the East Coast, if you're looking specifically at the Pennsylvania news, that is coming soon. But you can already have a conversation that tailors your interests a lot more. Meaning, when you get a text from Informed, it isn't just a one-way conversation, which a lot of the conglomerates and the large news corporates, they speak down to you, and they pass these news down to you one way. And if you want to answer, if you want to talk to them, guess what? You can't, because there's a no
Mhm.
reply email, and there is a many walls of customer success and customer support that's layered between you and the source. In our case, it's a conversation, and it's a conversation with a concierge that is dedicated to you, that cares about what you want. So if you have a follow up, for example, hey, how do the tariffs affect me in this neighborhood in Philly? You get a response. That response is tailored to you, and that is meant to give you information that is useful, meant to give you the power of being informed, the dignity of being informed. And that is something that we've already unrolled today, the ability to have a conversation and text back and be able to trust the things that you get, because it is not a robot and it is not a conglomerate with incentives on the other side. The only aim and North Star of Informed is to be helpful to our reader, to be helpful to you. So that personalization is already available. And as we unfold more and more topics, even the initial texts will become more and more personalized.
I love that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is something that I believe is very useful. If uh as we look at the, I hate to use the word demise, but the breakup of organizations like PBS and people who really or truly understand what First Amendment means, and being able to articulate factual information and give world news unapologetically with factual information without misinforming people. I think you are in a great space right now, right? And so maybe we probably need to talk about some type of connection affiliate link or something to give to the people. I think is very important for you to continue the work that you do, and you have a friend in us, and we talk weekly, and we're going to continue to support people who we always say are doing the work, right?
Absolutely.
We don't promote anything. We don't have any sponsors. We don't do that, right? We support people who are generally doing the work. And that come from our local politicians, right? I don't care if you're Republican, a Democrat. All I care about the facts, where I see you, and if you're doing the work to help the people, right? And I just want to give you kudos because I believe this may be something that people start to look into and have the potential of being something really big. So kudos to you. Yeah. If it was one last point or statement that you may have not had the opportunity to say here on this platform where we talk weekly, is it something you would like to tell the people, or something you may have new coming up? You talked about some of the things you may be unrolling and informed on a website, but is there anything you would like to leave with, a message or point?
I would say, it's maybe a challenge to the listener, and maybe, a point of maybe a bit of a push is I would encourage anyone who is, listening to. I mean, this has been a great conversation, and this is an amazing show.
Thank you.
Uh, I would encourage listeners to think like, where in your life is, your attention being hijacked and being stolen from you, and because that is a moment in which you are being disenfranchised,
Mm,
and it begins fundamentally with information. I would say that's kind of our whole thesis, but it doesn't end there. And I would just encourage the listeners to think like, where in your life is your attention being hijacked from you? That is a moment of disenfranchisement. And that is a moment that you want to stand up for yourself, for your attention, and think of how can you claim it back? How can you regain your attention, which is your power? We focus specifically on saving your attention and honoring your attention in the news world, which we think is very fundamental. And so if you feel like your attention is being hijacked and robbed in the realm of news, then we also want to invite you to join us in our mission. And is something, Gregor, you mentioned that's new, that's coming up, is beyond the website, well beyond the website. We launched a toll-free number that is sort of like a 800 flowers, 800 contacts, 800 gut junk. Uh, we want to be the next big toll-free number for facts and for factual
mm,
information. And so we just rolled out 844 info, which is 844-406-4636, which is the what the info resolves into. And anyone who listens to this show is definitely a friend of Informed as well. And you can simply text us, text join to join our mission and to see if we may be helpful to you. And as you've learned in this whole conversation, we only serve a reader. And if you
mm.
don't want us to exist, we do not exist. And that's the spirit with which we built this, and the spirit with which we continue to bring this solution in the solution journalism approach that we share together with you guys.
Well, fantastic. I don't have
Wonderful.
my switcher here with me where I would have gave you a round of applause, but we're gonna give you a round of applause right here. I want to thank you for coming to We Talk Weekly. One thing we
Yeah.
say on the show, we always say, once you come to the show, you're a friend of the show, and we always welcome you to come back. I do want to give you a little homework and say that any rollout that you have, reach back out to us, and we'll bring you back out. I think what you're doing is very important, and we want the world to know. I mean, we have viewers, which surprisingly in Tibet. I was like, how? I mean, we have viewers everywhere, right? And our quote unquote little show in Philadelphia, we get a lot of feedback, and so a lot of the feedback that we do get is they love the interviews that we conduct because we make them personal and organic, right? And so when it comes to people who interview, they are pleasantly surprised with how they feel after they leave. And so we want to thank you for coming to the show. And we again,
Mhm.
before you leave, why don't you let everyone know how they can get in contact with you, find your show, do the research, whatever they need to get in contact with you and get signed up.
Totally. Thank you for that, Gregory. And it's been amazing being on the show. So thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Sparkle. This has been yeah, absolute delight. I am Kira Shishkin, the CEO of Informed, and our mission is to give you news without noise. To join our mission and to be part of this media minimalist movement and media mindfulness movement, especially in the news, you can text join to 844 406 info, which is the same as 844 406 4636. That is our toll-free number. And if you're driven and motivated to, have your own news concierge that allows you to be informed without being influenced, we would love to have you join our mission, join what we're doing, join our work, and we're just getting started.
Fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, again, thanks for coming to the show. And I have to put this disclaimer out there for those who are watching. We Talk Weekly is not being paid for this. This is not an ad. This is strictly information. We're just giving information to the people that we believe will keep you informed and stay on the facts, right?
Yeah.
No more misinformation. This is strictly for your information, right? And so strictly for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're watching We Talk Weekly after the talk on WPPMLP Philadelphia 106.5 FM. We Talk Weekly's After the Talk with our special guest, Carrie Shishkin. And you missed a wonderful interview. So make sure you rewind and make sure you like and subscribe and follow what we're doing here and watch this video back so you can get informed. I'm your boy Charles Gregory with the beautiful
Classy Lady Sparkle.
and the beautiful.
Lauren Sizzle.
And we'll see you right after this, y'all. Don't go nowhere. We'll be right back, y'all. Holla.